This is the Corporate Hitman, where we talk about corporate greed and the many ways in which they ruin our lives. Today's video is on Etsy and the planned boycott of its platform. For those who don't know, Etsy is an e-commerce company which facilitates the sales of vintage and handcrafted goods. In theory, anyway. The company made an absolute killing during the corona pandemic. Their stock closed at $37 a share at the start of lockdown on March 20th, 2020. By the end of November 2021, their stock price had soared to a high of $287. Not even Zoom, the previously unheard of company which ran the entire nation's video conferencing, had as large of a surge in price, as they only went from $130 a share on March 2020 to an all-time high of $530 before plummeting down to $220 at the end of November 2021. This was just a 4x gain from the start of the pandemic to all-time highs, barely half of the pump that Etsy experienced. So, the Etsy corporation made a ton of money during the pandemic, an amount that was reflected in the CEO's executive compensation. Josh Silverman made $1 million in 2018, $1 million in 2019, but then in 2020, his total pay doubled to $1.9 million. It's a pattern found in the other Etsy executives too. The CFO's pay went from $2.2 million in 2018 to more than $4 million in 2020. But that's not even the worst of it. While the CEO and CFO's compensations doubled between 2018 and 2020, the CTO's pay went up 570% in those same 2 years. To phrase it a different way, Etsy's Chief Technology Officer's executive compensation nearly 6x'd in the 2 years that the entire country was struggling with the economic whiplash of the global lockdown. These massive executive pays, funded by record high profits, mostly came from two sources of revenue. Etsy makes the lion's share of its money by charging the sellers a fee to list their wares. It's similar to eBay's item listing fee if you've ever used that platform, as well as charging the buyers a service fee whenever they buy an item. Similar to how Ticketmaster will charge the victims a 37% fee for the privilege of buying scalped concert tickets. Since the Etsy executives made gobs of money off the collective backs of the buyers and sellers, then they should, as any non-money grubbing creature would do, share a portion of that money with the people who earned it for them. Right? Fuck no. There wouldn't be any cause for a strike if they had. Instead of doing the humane thing of supporting the buyers and sellers, the Etsy executives instead decided to increase all the transaction fees paid on all the purchases by 30%, forcing the sellers to raise their prices and risk pricing out elastic buyers. If the 30% higher fees and resulting loss of sales weren't bad enough, Etsy also implemented something called off-site ads during the pandemic. Off-site ads are exactly what they sound like. They're ads placed on different websites for products sold on Etsy, such as Google search results, Instagram sponsored posts, and YouTube banner ads, like the one you might be seeing right now if this channel ever gets monetized. These ads work on a per shop basis. All sellers are automatically enrolled in these ads, which by itself is already a predatory practice. Dark patterns are names given to practices which are deliberately designed to trick users into doing something they may not want to do, such as volunteering all the sellers on the platform to create ads for their products, footing them with a bill, and then burying the option to turn it off within the store's setting page, which is an option that the store might legitimately want to have. Because shops which remain opt-in are forced to pay what can be thought of as a broker fee to Etsy for connecting the buyer and the seller whenever an item is sold from an ad. It's a 15% fee if the seller brought in less than $10,000 of revenue the past year, or 12% if their revenue was more than $10,000. 12 to 15% is a large fucking fee to pay for an ad. We might be justifying the off-site ads program with the rationale that since the fees only get triggered when someone buys an item after seeing the ad, that is actually still beneficial for the store owner since they're still pocketing 85% of the sale. The alternative would be the seller getting 0% of the sale if no ads were made, and a would-be customer never buys an item that they didn't know existed. Which could be a valid point, were it not for the fact that many Etsy sellers are already operating on razor-thin margins. A 15% haircut is enough to send a lot of sellers into the red. And why on earth should an Etsy seller be forced to lose money in order to sell an item? Don't forget that all of the stores start with the off-site ads option enabled by default. turning it off requires a 6-step process, meaning Etsy essentially forced many of their sellers to take a loss when the policy was first implemented, and people didn't realize what was going on yet. The greatest irony is that the people who are hurt the most by off-site ads are the average artists trying to turn their hobby into a side hustle. They're the people who have the lowest margins to begin with. The people who aren't as heavily impacted by this policy have much larger margins to work with because they aren't even using Etsy for its intended purpose. Etsy has seen an absolutely massive influx of dropshippers the past 8 years. If we type virtually anything into Etsy and search Google for the shop images, you'll see that the vast majority of the top sellers are just using the Etsy platform to sell mass-produced wholesale goods from Chinese factories, such as this seller who's using an obviously AI-generated profile picture from thispersondoesnotexist.com. Etsy is basically diet eBay at this point. All these dropshippers wound up creating 2 groups of sellers on Etsy. In one corner are the artisans who spend the bulk of their energy perfecting their craft, which, understandably, doesn't leave much time for a storefront running. On the other side are the dropshippers, whose only provided labor is copying-pasting people's addresses into AliExpress. Enter the Star Seller Program, another incentive created by the Etsy executives during their record profit period. The Star Seller Program gives a visual distinction to sellers who respond to customers within a 24-hour window, sellers who consistently get 5-star ratings, and sellers who provide tracking on their orders. You want to know which group of sellers are able to respond to customers within 24 hours on a consistent basis? The dropshippers, who don't spend any time making the items that they're selling. You know who consistently gets 5-star ratings? Dropshippers, who take advantage of standard operating manufacturing procedures used in Chinese factories to ensure uniform quality of goods. You want to know who gets the best access to tracking more orders? Dropshippers, who are able to utilize the tracking provided by the $300 billion market cap company AliExpress. The rewards for becoming a star seller are, in the words of Etsy, the ability to stand out from the crowd, along with higher chances to get your products featured to buyers, which leads to the opportunity for increased sales. No craftsperson can possibly compete with the sheer manufacturing capability of the world's largest manufacturing plants in the world's largest manufacturing country with the world's largest population. Yet those massive manufacturers are the people that the Etsy executives are choosing to support during their periods of record profits and 6-tupled executive pay, not the disciples of the hand who Etsy was made for. So, on April 11th, many Etsy sellers are shutting down their stores voluntarily and going on strike for a week. We don't know what the results of the strike will be, but I'll upload a follow-up piece if it leads to anything worth talking about. Thanks for watching the video, and remember to subscribe and hit the like button to help spread this message to more people.